I couldn't be more excited than to share this incredibly inspiring conversation that I've had with the wonderful Joseph Knight, one of the most inspirational managers who really delves into what it takes to be a great manager in this mad world that we're all in of luxury retail, and how important it is to allow your team to be heard. Those of you who are looking to get into management, those of you that are hiring for managers, this is one to listen to. We could chat all day long, really, and I think that it's just so nice to meet people in our industry that are so authentic like you. So I'm going to start with welcoming you, Joseph. Thank you for coming all the way here to tell us your story.
Thank you for having me. Honestly, this is an absolute pleasure. It's a delight.
Good. I'm so happy because, you know what, it is quite a daunting thing to talk about you and your career. And, you know, I'm just grateful that you're up for it, really. And I can't wait. And as I said at the beginning when you walked in, I'm actually really excited that I don't know enough and I want to know. So would you mind by starting just by telling us all how this all came about for you?
Wow, it's a big question. I initially was studying film and TV production at uni, and to cut a long story short, it wasn't quite right for me. And so I went on a little bit of a exploration of creative endeavors. What is right for me? How can I express myself? How can I, because I've always been quite expressive, and I wanted to find a way that felt like it aligned with my passions. And at the start, I was just going out all the time. I was partying a lot. I was working in clubs, hosting club nights, promoting, doing a lot of that 6 nights a week. But as I was doing that, I was wearing probably 100 times more makeup than I usually wear every day. And one of my friends, who was initially a makeup artist, she just said to me, "Well, Joseph, you are like wearing a lot of makeup a lot of the time. Have you ever thought about, and I like how you do your makeup, have you ever thought about doing it on other people?" So I went to do a few courses, and I fell in love. I loved it. I started freelancing on very like humble beginnings, friends, family, local shows I would find on like Model Mayhem or Star Now, that sort of thing. And then randomly, the same friend who told me consider going into makeup, she had a show that she couldn't make, and she trusted me to take her place and do it, because I'm not gonna mess her up or anything. Like, she's a friend, I have loyalties to her. And I didn't know what the show was until I got to it, and it was one of these scheduled men's fashion week shows for Spencer Hart. So it was incredibly daunting for me, and it was supported by the MAC events team. And so that was my first connection with MAC Cosmetics professionally. Before that, I was probably visiting the store every single week, like, because I wanted to see the latest things. I wanted to get to know what products are hot at the moment. So I had a passion for it. And then after doing that Fashion Week show, I felt a lot more confidence to then explore other parts of makeup artistry. So I did a lot of lookbooks, runway shows. I even did quite a lot of work in the experimental sort of like latex, fetish and burlesque scene, which was really exciting. That's where I really flexed my creativity, and I built up my portfolio then. And back then, if you wanted to work at MAC, you had to have a portfolio. And so the counters that I was visiting so often, I eventually applied for. I was really grateful to be accepted there, but I was not quite ready for the responsibility of what it means to be a MAC makeup artist. And so the worst thing happened. I failed my probation. It was awful, but it was the best thing that happened to me, because at that point there and then, I realized if I really want this, I have to really work for it. And so I did everything. I took some time. I took maybe a year away from like retail to think about, well, what went wrong here? How can I figure this out? I worked on my freelance. I went more into fashion, a bit of bridal, a bit of glamour. And then I came back to MAC with my portfolio, and I explained to them really like on a real in a situation. I was like, listen, I've had experience. I have this experience. I've had this experience with Mac, but I want to get back because I know how good it felt there. And I felt like I belonged there. It was a brand that celebrated individuality from the start and creativity. I felt like it felt like home. And so my store manager at that point was so kind and so understanding, and she was just real with me. And this is sort of something which has stayed with me since then. It's like, well, this is the opportunity, it's yours. We're going to start you on a Christmas temp contract, and if it goes well, great. This is what we want to see, this is what we don't want to see. And I worked my arse off as a Christmas temp, and then they reset it as a permanent contract for a full-time member. But then my probation restarted, and so every single day I just knew that I had to be better than what I was before. And for that, I just really embraced the feedback that I received from other managers who were managing me and other people around me. And I just wanted to be the best artist I could be for Mac. I had an absolute passion for the brand, and I felt like I fumbled this before. I'll be damned if I fumble this again. And I just really, really, really put so much of my heart into it. And from doing that, starting back in Harvey Nichols, I then moved around to Selfridges, Mac on 3, which was an absolute dream. It was back-to-back makeup appointments. I could express my artistry. I learnt from some of the most incredible artists. I know Melly, who was on the podcast before, she was there, and she, believe me, she is like top tier. She always has been. Like, the demand for her artistry was off the wall when I was there. So I think we all knew that she was going to be a star from the start. Like, she was always going to be in demand. And then when I was at Selfridges, I realized I had a passion for driving culture and developing trends. And so I took on the role as the Viva Glam specialist. And that was a role about driving the Viva Glam sales that would support the Mac AIDS Fund. And I had a lot of success there, and I was really proud of it. And I realized that that is actually a skill that I can translate into something on a bigger scale. And that's where I started my management career. And I moved into, well, even before that, actually, this was another thing. I applied for a supervisor job and I really put my heart into it. I orchestrated 2 mystery shops off my own back. I did a SWOT analysis, a business plan, everything that I thought, even looking back now, was like a lot of hard work. And I didn't get the job. And the reason I didn't get the job was because they said, you smashed the interview, you did everything right, but the other person who's applied for it has management experience. So no for now. And I was like, what can I do with that information? Like, it was really quite challenging to hear, because I knew that what I delivered was what they asked for, but it's out of my control. And then when the managers who gave me that feedback went on a conference, they discussed my situation unknowing to me, and they thought that I would be a good applicant for the Pro Store in Covent Garden as a supervisor. And so I went there, applied, I got it, but I feel like my whole retail career has been like peppered with lessons and, you know, like, this has gone right, this has gone wrong, maybe we can try to do things differently. And in Covent Garden, I think I had a baptism of fire as to how not to do things. And I quickly learned from feedback around me that, you know, people work for people. People want to be seen and heard. If you treat people like good people, good employees, they will be good employees. And if you do the alternative, how can they fulfill that in any other way than being bad? Whatever that means. And so Covent Garden was great. I loved working there. I went into it as a supervisor, then as assistant manager, and then I sideways stepped to the global flagship in Carnaby Street as assistant manager. And at that point, I was really enjoying Mac. I loved it, but I had been approached by a competitor brand that I was really interested in working for. At the same time, I felt like my work with Mac wasn't quite done. I hadn't been a store manager yet, and I felt like I wanted to prove myself, because at this point as well, another thing I forgot to say, when I was let go at MAC Cosmetics from my probation, I was invited to reapply again in 6 months' time. And so I thought, okay, let me do that. I'll reflect on everything. when I did reapply for like a Gatwick Airport position or something like that, I just thought, let me take a position to like build myself up. Not only didn't I not get it, but I got a letter from the head of the HR of Estee Lauder saying, because of your not so glowing reference, I don't think any of your applications will work in the future. And I was absolutely beside myself. It was horrible.
Well, it just shows that, persistence
absolutely
makes it happen. So
it does.
I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
What's different about you from the other, guests that I've had on here that have gone from working in makeup to freelance? They've done it the other way around. So they actually started on the shop floor and then took it to freelance, where actually you did it the other way around. Where did that come from? What made you think, okay, well, I'm doing this freelance, I'm getting great work, now I want to go on the shop floor? Because usually it's the other way around.
In my heart of hearts, I am an artist. So film and TV was my first passion. And I think when we talk about freelance artists, I think I had a lot of work, but I wasn't making a lot of money. So I think I needed retail to support and supplement what was going on. But I'm really happy that it happens the way that it did. Later on in my management career, I would retain the freelance clients that I had got from like on the shop floor or bridals, very specific small amounts of freelance that would then support me in another way. So I think there's different ways to do it. I don't think you have to start one way and end another way. Yeah.
No, and I agree with that. Another question that I have is that usually when you find candidates, I mean, I speak to them all the time, that are really hyper creative as you are, they tend to go down the sort of either creative or sales route rather than management. It's amazing how you've managed to combine both, because that is very rare. What challenges have you faced during that process of, combining your creativity and then people management?
I think initially I think I was quite naive in what people management would be. And I learned a lot from my mentors and different people who have managed me. And I think the biggest challenge was understanding that everyone works in different ways and there's lots of different communication styles. There's lots of different learning styles. And just because the way that I might action something or do a task or understand something, it doesn't mean everyone else understands the same way. And so I learned that the best way for me to be a manager and incorporate my creativity is if it's not me at the top with the best ideas. It's that this is a round table moment, and you know what, guys, this is the objective, this is the end goal. Let's brainstorm it together and see what we can do. Because I think as a manager, for me, if I'm the only one coming up with the good ideas, that's a terrible idea. I think everyone's voice should be heard. Everyone should be able to speak up. And I think if you can creatively empower people to do that, whether it be through, I don't know, like one-to-one conversations, getting to know them, really probing and seeing where does this person want to go, I think they will work harder for you and they'll work harder for themselves. And I think inspiring people creatively with like makeup artistry is quite an easy thing to do in Mac's environment. And so I really lent on what I had experienced, what I had learned, and what other people could teach other people. It doesn't have to be my voice being the loudest voice in the room. I really wanted to magnify the other people around me and uplift and develop everyone around me to be the best they could be.
I think, honestly, just listening to that, it's just so refreshing. And, we say it all the time, people don't leave their jobs, they leave their bosses.
Absolutely.
And if everybody had a manager like you, no one would be going anywhere.
But do you know what? It hasn't always been that way. Like, absolutely. Like, I agree people work for people, and who you work for is, it's so important. Like, your work day can be so crap if you don't get along with your manager or they don't see
100%.
you, But it's taken a while for me in different environments to learn how different people respond best. It's honestly very test and learn. And I can only thank the people who have been patient and gracious enough with me on my journey, whether they're my managers or people who I've managed, to give me the time to digest feedback they have given. I'm not the sort of person to say the only people's feedback I will receive as my line managers, I've had to learn that, you know, how I interact with other people and how they feel and how I respond to them is also just as important as what my manager might say.
100%. You mentioned earlier that your career, especially, I mean, we've only really touched upon Mac, was quite peppered. I mean, you went across all the different branches. I remember that Covent Garden store really, really well. It was my favourite, actually, I'll be honest. Is there a particular time that you can really think that you thought, wow, this is really hard and I don't know how I'm going to get through this? Whether it be in your managerial time or, you know, when you were an artist for them, where you thought perhaps this isn't going to go the way you wanted it to?
Honestly, I think the most challenging time for me in my retail career would probably have been the pandemic. I felt like it was an unprecedented time and it was like a global trauma that no one could quite navigate. There was no blueprint. I was working at Fenty at that point and in Harvey Nichols, and it was just really, really difficult to figure out, how do you keep everyone motivated? How do you make sales? How do we even do makeup if you can't touch anyone's face? Like, it was a really challenging time. And it also put into perspective for me what was really important for what I wanted to get out of life, my career, and what sort of impact I had on other people's lives too. I think up until the pandemic, I can only speak for myself, but I think the temperature on retail was turning up and up and up and up. It was getting so intense. The industry's so oversaturated in beauty. There was MAC, Charlotte Tilbury, Huda Beauty. Like everyone was bringing out newness all the time, and you had to have a different edge. And I was really struggling with that. It was quite challenging to navigate. I think I overcame it because I took some time out and moved to Bournemouth, and I tapped into what were my initial passions, which is like visual arts. So whether it be writing my books or going back into tattoo design or makeup artistry, that's what I lent on. And I took a step back in my management career, in a sense that I took a job which was much smaller, responsibilities in salon services in Dorset. And I just wanted to make whatever energy I'm putting into work to be more diverse, so I can challenge myself in different ways.
It's really inspiring. And I think anybody listening would actually, that went through, well, we all went through it, but perhaps was in retail and decided to take a step back during that time. I think it's really inspiring that you were able to do that and take less responsibilities to it's almost that saying, isn't it? You've taken 10 steps back in order to take 2 forward, but actually you've done the opposite, because it really helped to propel you and push you to the next level. So during the pandemic, you were working for Fenty, and I was going to ask you, what was that process like? So you were in your dream role at MAC, right? Which was a company that you always wanted to work for. You did whatever it took. You showed real resilience throughout that whole recruitment process and getting in there and proving yourself and working your way up to management, essentially. So what was it like to actually resign and leave and go and work somewhere else?
It was a really, really difficult decision to make, but I was in a circumstance where I had managed most, if not all, of the stores that I wanted to manage in London, whether it be White City, Stratford, Covent Garden. I'd been in Carnaby Street as well. And they created a new position for me, which was designed to go up and down the country supporting different managers in their progression and their development, whether it be operations, HR, audit, that sort of thing. And then after the success of that position and also driving the top 5 stores in the UK, there was a vacancy for the district manager role as an area manager, and I applied for it and was successful, but it was a temporary position. And so after 2 temporary positions, when they would expire, because of the turmoil of what was going on in MAC at that point, there wouldn't have been an area filled position for me to go back to. And so I had to make the decision, am I going to go back from being an area manager into a store which I know I've managed already, because I'd worked in Covent Garden twice as a store manager already and I'd managed all the other stores, or should I try something different? And for me, I felt like at this point I'd been with MAC for 6-7 years and I wanted to learn something different. I wanted to expand outside of freestanding store management. I wanted to experience department store. I wanted to experience luxury, and the opportunity. And I could see how disruptive Fenty Beauty was at that point. And so I felt like I had to apply. It was very hard to leave MAC because for me, MAC personally had done so much for me as an artist, developing my individuality, celebrating my individuality, and me being like covered in tattoos and stuff, like working in retail. What brands can you work in Harrods and Harvey Nichols at that time and still be yourself? MAC was it. I felt really supported by it. And so then to go to Fenty, it was a new chapter, but it was definitely right. Like, it felt correct.
And how did you then support them as an essentially new brand in the market? How did you, really make noise, as the manager, especially in a department store and in Harvey Nichols, which isn't, the Harrods of Selfridges the ones to really go to as a forefront, but it is for beauty. So how did you make noise for Fenty as the manager there?
Fenty was always like a disruptive brand in the beauty industry, and this was before they went into Boots, and so we were the only location that were in Harvey Nichols. The only location was in Harvey Nichols, and my predecessor had opened the account, and so I was essentially carrying the baton. And the team were fantastic. They were really hardworking. We had lots of different accounts. A lot of my job was developing business-to-business connections or driving eventing or networking, and I had so much fun there. Honestly, we had some collaboration with some drag race artists. It was my first introduction into real international sales, in the sense that we would design lookbooks in different languages for different hotels to give to their customers to help them understand and connect with our brand. We would talk to different spas or whatever. Like, it was a real creative moment to drive transactions to the store and drive value. I really enjoyed it. It was great fun. There was a lot of like theatre on the shop floor. I was a real advocate for, we put on a show when we're here, and it was great. I loved it. I
think that's the same though with MAC. I think if you were to, going back there again, I remember as a customer going into any of their stores, and it was incredibly theatrical.
It was a party.
It was, yeah, absolutely.
It was a party.
And, we were just saying, weren't we, just before this, that it sort of took a bit of a back step now, but I think that it's going to come back around because, again, celebrating the individuality, all of that, and the product is actually fantastic.
Absolutely.
It really is. You obviously went through the pandemic throughout your time with Fenty. I want to move on from there. I know that, during that time, and obviously throughout your time with MAC as well, and as a freelance makeup artist, I know that you had opportunity to work with some incredible clients, celebrities, high net worth individuals. Is there a real memorable moment that you would say is a staple highlight of your career that sort of stays with you all the time?
I think maybe my first ever celebrity that I worked with in a freelance capacity. I was working on Mac on 3 in Selfridges, and we received a phone call from a man saying, "Hey, look, I've got my client here and they need their makeup done." But the challenge was I had not got my makeup kit, because who travels around London with the makeup kit when you're working in Selfridges? And so I then had to go and do Heather Small's makeup in a hotel with just her makeup kit. And it was...
With her makeup?
With her makeup.
So you didn't go round the shop
all I had was my
up...
brushes. I brought samples and that was it. But I did not have anything more than I could carry. And for me, it was the funnest challenge ever. Like, it's a real skill drill to say, look, this is the artist, this is the face. Try and do that to the best of your ability. They've got a performance later. Figure it out.
Do you know what? That is a classic example of a great workman never blames his tools.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What an amazing story. I love that one, actually, that you didn't have any of your kit. You had nothing to rely on apart from her makeup bag.
No, and I found it really exciting as well, because I heard her doing her her warm-ups and her vocal stuff, and she's so talented. Like, I know she's talented already to be in the position that she is, but she is a true professional through and through.
Yeah.
Like, you can tell she just knows her stuff.
What an amazing story. I love that one. So you've finished at Fenty. How did that happen? Because I know you went on to Space NK, but what was that transition like, and what was the recruitment process like for you at Space NK?
Honestly, Fenty was a really challenging moment for me, because the pandemic happened. There was a massive decline in transactions and customers, and they decided to downsize, even affecting other kendo brands like Marc Jacobs or Kat Von D or the other ones. And my job was no longer required, so I was made redundant.
Oh, fine.
Which was, it sucks, but it happens. Life happens.
How did that make you feel?
How did it make me feel? I didn't feel great about it, but at the same time, life happens. Like, I'd been in Mac for long enough, and I'd saw on cycle, my friends have got made redundant. Other people, I just felt like it's my turn. I can't take it personally. And what I did want to take from it, though, was I have to grow from this. I have to figure out and reevaluate what direction am I going in, because now is the perfect time to do it. And that's when I made the decision to move to Bournemouth, work on my tattoos, my book writing,
which are amazing, by the way.
Thank you. Thanks.
Really are. I know that we've noticed a lot of them, and I'm looking around now, and I love that one in your hand. You have to show it to the camera. Hold your own hand. What a brilliant thing. Did you do that one to yourself, or did you have
I
that one
designed
done?
it, but someone else has done it.
Okay.
But the only ones I've done myself are mostly on like my legs or my torso.
Painful?
No, I think the most painful one was the one that it doesn't show anymore, but it was on the palm of my hand, and I have to keep redoing it every night because the ink wouldn't stick. But I wouldn't do that again.
Do you know what? It's coming from the person that can't even have a blood test. I think I said that to you, actually. But
Yeah.
I really admire them. I think they're amazing.
Thank you.
And it just shows. And that's what I was going to ask you. Is that where has the makeup artistry sort of evolved into tattooing?
I think I think for a long time I kept them separate. Like, I've always been into tattoos, and makeup artistry I've always been into too. And I didn't really think there was a way that the two of them can interact. But then through Mac, like the tattoos on my face, they're inspired by an Erdem show, like things like that. Like, I wanted to incorporate them. I think you can be your own artist and define it yourself in whatever way you can.
There is a
crossover.
definitely a crossover. When I worked at Chanel and I was doing makeup with them, they actually brought out their own sort of almost transfers. I mean, I do them on my kid now all the time, but they were actual tattoo transfers, and they looked phenomenal.
Yeah.
So, and that was part of one of their fashion shows where the models were covered in them, but they're removable. So, there's definitely that crossover between makeup and tattoos, and that's why I was interested to think, to hear from you whether or not that was something that now you've transitioned into. But it's amazing. And what's nice for you, sorry to interrupt you.
Please.
What's nice now, and we were saying this when we first met, I remember, and I'm going to repeat it for the sake of this podcast, that we both sort of entered the retail industry where it was almost forbidden to have a visual tattoo if you were on the shop floor, especially in these prestigious department stores. Whereas now we're so lucky that, everybody's embracing individuality a lot more, and it's celebrated, and you don't need to hide them with a plaster over. I remember years ago we used to have to. I don't have any, but have to hide them with a plaster, and that was if that was your way of expressing yourself, you almost had to conceal that, and it's
absurd. And this is what I love about the retail industry, especially beauty right now. There is enough room for everyone.
Yeah.
There's as many customers there are in the world. There can be that many people who work in retail, because someone has to identify with someone.
Absolutely.
If I go onto a Mac counter, or this wouldn't happen at Mac, but if I went to a Mac counter and nobody looked like me and I was a customer, or no one had my style or whatever, I might be apprehensive about asking them to help me develop something or an aesthetic or a technique. But that's the great thing about what's going on right now. There's room for everyone, really.
And I think that that's the case across all areas of retail.
Absolutely.
Where you walk into a store or into a concession, and you look for somebody that you can identify with, that you feel is going to get you as a client.
It's connection.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Connection. Ultimately, customer service is about building rapport, connecting, understanding what the customer needs. And I think if people can see that they feel seen and understood as soon as they can, as possible, then it just fast tracks that connection. And I think as an employer, like in different places I've been in, I like diverse teams. I like to have different people. I like to have people who disagree with me. I like to have people who challenge me. They're my favorite people because it makes me think differently. And I think that is really good to celebrate, you know, difference and diversity in all different categories.
So if your team listening now, if they're going to come in tomorrow and start challenging you on everything, they'll say, well, Joseph, you said it, so I'm here to challenge you.
They already do, and I love it. Honestly, I love it because I honestly, one of the things that I've always thought is that I'm not like the gatekeeper of what we should do and shouldn't do. Everyone has to have a voice to be involved.
Yeah. Otherwise, there's no point, is there? And I think, you know, we talk about it all the time. You don't hire somebody so that you can tell them what to do. Otherwise, what's the point? You might as well just do it yourself.
Exactly. And, you know, different people have different experiences and they've done different things. They have different outlooks. They can have different ideas. What's the point in hiring someone just to be a vessel of your vision if you're not going to listen to what they're going to have to say? Maybe they have something that they're going to notice that you haven't noticed.
Yeah. I think, you know, it's really important to highlight that in retail, you know, there are so many people that come into retail and look at retail as their stopgap opportunity or the opportunity to sort of gain some experience, but they don't look at it long term. And I get quite frustrated about that. And we've spoken about this before, but I'm very passionate about this industry, and as are you. Because of the experiences that we've both had. And I think, you know, there has to be a certain level of resilience, which you've definitely proven in your time. But what do you think is the real sort of attribute that's needed to be successful or to reach the level of success that you have in your career?
I think that's such a big question. I think for me, I can only talk on my experiences, and I appreciate you highlighting that. The journey I'm on might look successful to me, but to someone else it might not. But for me, I'm happy with where I am right now. And I think if there's one thing that I have really tried to hold close is embracing change. This industry is never stagnant. It's always changing. The whole retail industry, there's always a new brand, there's an external factor, there's this, there's that, there's movement in promotions and sideways, and everything is always moving. And for me, I've always embraced the change, but I've also, the advice I've been given is go where the job is. To don't be afraid to shake things up. Don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone. A lot of the times I've applied for jobs, I've thought maybe I won't get it, but at least I'll get the feedback. You got to be open to hearing what other people are saying. And maybe you don't agree with it straight away, but maybe it's something to sleep on. Maybe it's something to think about.
That's a really, really good point. And I want to go back to what you just said about comfort zones, because when you did make that transition from being freelance to then going onto the shop floor and really embracing that and developing your skills in management, you then went into working for Fenty Beauty in Harvey Nicks. You then went on to work for Space NK.
So after Fenty, I moved to Bournemouth and I was working for Salon Services.
Okay.
And I was working on my books, my art, and then I moved back to London for Space NK.
Fine.
Yeah.
So with Space NK, the challenge I'm assuming there is because it's a multi-brand store. So it's not just one brand, one product that you have to tell the story of. And storytelling is a huge element, retail theatre, being able to really embrace the brand that you're representing. How did you find that then, going into a multi-brand store and having to essentially be the brand ambassador for hundreds of brands under that one roof, if you like?
It was amazing, honestly. It was lovely. Space NK was a lovely company to work for. And especially because the different brands that we collaborated with, there was such a high investment on knowledge and training. We often would connect with with company founders and CEOs who would come in and train us, and there'd often be gratis and gifts for us to discover it. Space NK prided itself on being non-biased, and so it was very much about like the education of each product and understanding what the customer's needs are. coming from salon services, the account I was in was business to business. And so I was selling multi-brand products as well already, but talking to professionals. So a lot of the information they gave me, I absorbed. And then when I went into Space NK, it was very much about understanding what the customer needs and then whittling it down to, okay, well, I have this Rolodex in my head of what products could work, but this one, based on the criteria you've said to me, sounds like it will work. It was really exciting working for Space NK. I initially was in their Covent Garden store on, I think it's Henrietta Street, for a few months. And then we moved location to open the new flagship, which was amazing. It was crazy busy from the start. It was on the most highly trafficked street in the UK by footfall between Covent Garden and Soho. It was incredible, and I couldn't have done it without the team. The team were absolutely amazing.
Were you involved in recruiting that team?
Yes, yeah.
And how was that process?
It was lovely. Honestly, I'm a real believer in people's potential, and if I can see that someone has the will to do something, I'm behind them 1,000%. Even if they've got like 30% of the skill, I will be the biggest advocate for them, because if they believe in themselves, I will help them go all the way. And that's what I have appreciated in my career, because I wasn't born knowing everything. I still don't know everything, but I know that someone has believed in me and given me the opportunity to grow. I want to do the same for the other people. And the team is great. Honestly, the team is great. A lot of them I'm still in touch with. We all hang out, go for dinners and stuff. It was a family. It was the best.
So I guess on the back of that, as a manager, and you are still a manager of an amazing brand, what is it that you look for then when you're recruiting for your teams?
I look for passion, and I like, I think passion and people who give and take feedback. So I think it's good, like if I'm in an interview and someone is asking questions back to me, that's a real nice thing to hear. If I can see that someone's done their homework and they've read the job description, they've looked up the brand's values and, you know, behaviors that we want to celebrate, that's like a green flag for me. I don't necessarily need someone to be like me, because I don't think if everyone is like me, that's a good thing. I look for diversity. I look for people who are passionate in their jobs. It doesn't necessarily mean they have all the experience, but it means, look, I can see this opportunity and I'm going to give everything I've got. And that's the sort of thing that I really, really hold on to, because you can't teach people to be passionate.
No.
I like nice people. You can't teach people to be nice either. You can teach people all the skills in the world. You can teach someone to be a makeup artist. You can teach someone all this and all that. But if they're not nice, who is going to want to be around them? You know,
Who's going to want to buy for them?
Not us, not the customers.
Yeah.
You know?
It's really amazing that you've said that. And that's why, you know, as part of our business, especially when we recruit temporary staff, or when we recruit anyone, really, we look for the attitude more so than anything. And when I'm running assessment centres, I say to everybody as they sit down, I don't need anybody to be nervous here, because at the end of the day, if you've got a good attitude, that's just, you know, authentic. It's who you are. I'm not really interested in the level of experience you've got, because everything can be taught. And if you've got the right attitude, you will be successful. And this is what we were saying. Everybody can come into retail. There's, you know, retail is across such a huge spectrum, but to be good at retail and to be successful in retail, it takes a lot of skill, and it takes people that are very special, that are really in tuned with customers, with their product, with being passionate about what they're doing. And I think it's that really drives the success.
Absolutely. And I see that I've worked with some of your team who have supported us in my current role, and you can see that. You really can. You hire nice people.
Oh.
Like, I know that I really mean that. Like some of the guys that you've sent over that I've worked with are incredible. Like, they're great.
We try. No, it's
hit the ground running.
It's something that, you know, as a business, we are absolutely obsessed with, and it's finding the right caliber of staff, and that caliber is really around their attitude.
Absolutely.
And the fact that they've got a willingness and they want to hit the ground running, because especially going in as a temp, it's very daunting.
Oh, I know. Yeah,
And it's like they're the new person every day, right?
every
so
day.
it's quite scary.
It's challenging because the customer doesn't know the difference between a temp and a permanent contract, and so they're expecting them to know the same thing. But then when you look at what maybe the temp has had investment wise from the specific brand, it's different to what the permanent person has. But they still have to do it, and they do, which is what is really good.
I think being a temp is one of the hardest things ever. And I think there's a lot to say about them. I think they're amazing. I mean, my team here, I love them all and feel like, when we send them out to work, it's, so lovely to get great feedback. And it's because they really listen and they really try their best, because going in as a temp is like a working interview. Well, you gave a great example of that when you said, you went in, they gave you the opportunity to come back to Mac as a Christmas temp. That time frame for you was a working interview.
Listen, it was absolutely it was high stress every single day, but good stress in a sense that I felt like I was walking on eggshells, but I knew that I was walking towards a goal.
Yeah.
I knew that this is the parameters that I need to adhere to. This is the goal that I want. Let's do it for myself and for the brands. I think being a temp is great. I really do, because it gives you the opportunity to see, well, is this for me? And if it is, let's own it.
Absolutely. And to get the opportunity to work across so many different brands.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you this question. Reflecting now on your amazing journey, is there one thing that you would say you're most proud of achieving throughout that time?
I don't feel much about my successes, but I feel really proud of the people who I've collaborated with, when I've been a store manager and my assistant managers or supervisors I've been progressed and they've been progressed, or they tell me when they first come into a supervisor role, look, I really enjoy working with you, but my end goal is to go into operations and stock management. Can you help me do this? And I'll be like, yeah, let's figure this out. And then I have people who have done that, who have achieved the goal that they wanted to do. And when I see them achieving what they want to do, it makes me feel proud that, I've been a small piece in their journey. And because I can only think of how I've felt, where I've wanted to be something, where I've wanted to get back to Mac, and where I've wanted to leave, get the job back and leave as an area manager and bring up other people. How I have felt fighting that drive for myself. If I can do that and support someone else in their drive, it just really makes me feel great. It makes me feel like I'm actually contributing something.
But that's what makes a great manager. It's not necessarily what you achieve, but what your team can achieve because of you.
Absolutely.
And I think anybody that's recruiting for management now should really look at that and take what you've just said as, so basically what I'm trying to get at here, if I was to hear that in an interview, as an answer, I'd be like, wow, this guy really is an amazing manager, because it's about the team.
It is honestly, it's people first, because if you put them in any other rank, it's not going to work, because you need people, and it's as simple as that. You have to connect. You have to understand people. This isn't something that I've always understood, but it's finally clicked, and I feel like it's empowered me to empower other people. It's results are abundant when you feel like you're a unit and everyone is working together. And you can see people enjoy coming to work when they feel like, oh, my boss really appreciates what I'm doing, or my boss is supporting me and going on my journey. And it makes me feel good at the end of the day, where I know I've supported someone in their journey.
Well, this is what keeps people there.
Yeah.
And going back to what I said before, where you don't leave your job, you leave your boss, especially in this industry. We hear it all day, every day. But the truth is, when you're on the journey with them and you're showing that support, they want to do it more and more for you.
Absolutely.
So bringing this all back now, you've now moved on. Mm-hmm. You're with my favourite brand. You can smell it from over here. And, you've gone back into, a single brand again, with an incredible story to tell. Mm-hmm. How was that transition?
Oh my God, it was amazing. Again, so I'm not sure if I can say the brand's name, but I'm sure anyone
That's
could
why
guess.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyone who knows me and smells me regularly will know what we're talking about. Yes.
So I was working in Space and K, and we had the new store that was opened, and we often, when I mean often, I mean every single day, we would get store visits, and I loved it because I'd get to meet these other people in the industry, and I'd get to tap into their passion for their brand and understand their expectations of us, and we collaborate together. And basically, this brand was looking around for a location for one of their stores, which is now opened in Covent Garden, and they were scouting around, and they passed through into the store, and they were with their general manager, their marketing manager, and their global director. And so the three of them come into the store, and instantly I don't know who they are, but I can tell there's someone, because I feel like you could tell they had a presence about them. And they came over to look at their brand, and that brand in my heart is one of my favorites. Like for Scent, it is my favorite. So I'm happy to be working here. But it allowed me the opportunity to share with them why I love their brand. And it was just like the collaborations that they have done with different people in my personal life that I look up to, or the stories behind their product, the lore, the way that it's created, the creativity. It's just so aligned with a lot of my identity, personality, and like values. And so we really connected. We really got along, me and the three people. And when a position was advertised on LinkedIn, the one thing in my head that was like ringing true was like, people work for people, and I felt a real connection with them. And so I thought, let me apply, let me see. The position that I applied for was actually a trainer position. I didn't think I would get it, but I just wanted to have a conversation with them to see what the future might be in their brand, and to see if there was a place for me. And there was, and I love it. Yeah.
Here we are, and that's how we met.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm so happy about that, actually, and I'll be
Absolutely.
thanking those people, because it's the start of our incredible relationship. So I'm really, really happy, actually, to have met you and to have listened to this story. And I'm sure anybody that's listened or is listening to this will find it truly inspiring. And it's different to so many other people that we've spoken to that perhaps have worked in this industry. And it just shows that resilience and passion and drive is really what needs to be at the core to be successful. Lastly, what advice would you give anybody that's starting their journey now in retail?
I would look and identify who you think is successful in your industry, and see if you can learn something from them. See if you can surround yourself with people who know better than you, and learn from them, and don't give up on yourself. And really, really believe that you deserve to be successful, and it's going to happen. You just got to take the steps there. There may be some things that might knock you back. There may be some surprises. There may be some unprecedented times. Who knows? But you can't give up on yourself. You just have to keep going for it. And I'm just eternally grateful for the people who have given me opportunities, and I want to pay it forward. And I think if you find yourself in that situation, you should do the same.
Amazing. Honestly, I've enjoyed this conversation so much.
Thank
and
you.
I'm so grateful for your time. Thank you, Joseph.
Honestly, thank you, Steph. Honestly, I'm a massive fan of the podcast. I'm really happy to be here. This is lovely.
Good. Thank you. And I hope everybody listening will enjoy it as much as I have today. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks.